Sometimes the people we push away are the only ones our children feel safe enough to hold on to. Marcus Bennett kept his eyes on the polished marble floor as the security guard handed him the small cardboard box containing the last pieces of his job: a coffee mug with a chipped handle, a folded gray jacket, a crayon drawing Noah had made 2 weeks earlier with the words, "Best Dad Ever" written in shaky blue marker. The lobby of Hartwell Medical Tower glowed in cold white light, all glass walls and quiet money, the kind of place where even silence sounded expensive. Employees pretended not to stare as Marcus walked toward the revolving doors with slow, steady steps. Nobody spoke. Nobody ever did when someone got fired by Evelyn Hartwell herself. At 34, Evelyn had built a reputation sharper than the heels, clicking against the marble behind him now. She was known for cutting problems out of her company before they had the chance to breathe. And today, apparently, Marcus had become one of those problems. "You crossed a professional boundary," Evelyn said calmly, from several feet behind him. Her voice carried the same controlled precision she used during shareholder meetings. "My daughter is not part of your responsibilities." Marcus stopped near the front entrance, but didn't turn around right away. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass doors, turning the Chicago skyline into a blur of silver and smoke. He adjusted the box slightly in his arms before finally facing her. Tall, broad-shouldered, tired around the eyes in the way single parents often were. "I understand, ma'am," he replied quietly. No anger, no pleading. That seemed to bother Evelyn more than if he had yelled. She folded her arms tighter across her navy coat. "HR will finalize the paperwork by tomorrow morning." Marcus nodded once. "Thank you for the opportunity." A few employees exchanged awkward glances. One young intern lowered her eyes, visibly uncomfortable. Because everyone in that building knew Marcus. He was the maintenance supervisor who stayed late without complaining. The man who fixed broken elevators at 2 in the morning during snowstorms. The quiet black father who sometimes arrived carrying his son asleep on his shoulder because childcare fell through again. He never missed work unless Noah was sick. And even then, he still answered maintenance calls from home. Marcus turned back toward the doors. That should have been the end of it. Clean, professional, cold. But then a small voice shattered the silence behind him. "Wait!" The sound of tiny shoes slapped against marble. Before anyone could react, a little girl with loose curls and a pale yellow sweater came running down the hallway near the executive elevators. Lily Hartwell, 7 years old, CEO's daughter. Marcus barely had time to lower the box before Lily threw both arms around his waist. The cardboard tilted dangerously, the coffee mug rattling inside. The entire lobby froze. Evelyn's face lost color instantly. "Lily?" she whispered. But the little girl didn't let go. Her small hands clutched the back of Marcus's jacket, like she was afraid the world might take him away the second she loosened her grip. Marcus looked down carefully, his expression softening for the first time all morning. "Hey there, Peanut," he said gently. Lily's voice trembled against his chest. So quiet most people would have missed it. But Evelyn heard every word. "Please don't go." The lobby became so silent, even the rain outside sounded loud. Evelyn stared at her daughter in complete disbelief. Lily hadn't willingly hugged anyone in months. Not therapists, not teachers, not even her own mother most days. Since her father's death the year before, the little girl had wrapped herself in distance and silence like armor too heavy for a child her age. Yet here she was clinging to the man Evelyn Hartwell had just fired. Marcus swallowed slowly and glanced toward Evelyn, whose phone now hung forgotten at her side. For the first time since walking into that lobby, the powerful CEO looked less like a woman in control and more like a mother realizing she had missed something important. Marcus stood completely still, careful not to shift too fast with Lily holding on to him like a lifeline. Her cheek pressed against the fabric of his work jacket, and he could feel the small tremble in her shoulders. Around them, the lobby remained frozen in uncomfortable silence. Somewhere near the reception desk, a phone rang once before quickly stopping. Evelyn blinked hard, as if her own building had suddenly become unfamiliar to her. "Lily," she said again, softer this time, stepping forward carefully in her heels. "Sweetheart, come here." But Lily tightened her grip instead. Marcus lowered one hand slowly, resting it gently against the little girl's back without pulling her closer. He looked at Evelyn before speaking. "It is okay," he said quietly. "She is just overwhelmed." The words hit Evelyn strangely. Not defensive, not accusing, calm. too calm for a man who had just lost his job 10 minutes earlier. Why is she doing this? Evelyn asked, though the question sounded more directed at herself than anyone else. Marcus hesitated. He glanced down at Lily, then toward the rain sliding down the glass doors beyond them. Children hold on to the people who make them feel safe, he answered. The sentence settled into the lobby like a weight nobody knew how to move. Evelyn's expression tightened almost immediately. Not anger, exactly. Something more fragile than that. Her assistant Grace shifted awkwardly near the elevators, clutching a tablet against her chest. Nobody wanted to interrupt whatever this moment had become. Lily finally lifted her face slightly from Marcus's jacket. Her eyes looked tired in the way some children's eyes did after learning sadness too early. "Mom," she whispered carefully. "He stayed with me." Evelyn frowned faintly. "Stayed with you where?" Lily sniffled once before answering. "In the elevator last week?" Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Just for a second, like a man realizing a quiet moment had suddenly become very public. Evelyn turned toward him immediately. "What elevator?" He adjusted the box in one arm and spoke gently. "Last Tuesday evening. Service elevator on the east side." Evelyn searched her memory. Last Tuesday, she had been locked in a 3-hour conference call with investors from New York. She barely remembered getting home that night. She got stuck for a few minutes during a system reset, Marcus explained. The lights flickered. She panicked. Evelyn's face lost more color. "Nobody told me." Marcus gave a small shrug. "I did not think it mattered after she calmed down." "Did not matter?" Evelyn repeated quietly. Lily pulled back just enough to look up at her mother. "I was scared," she admitted in a tiny voice. Really scared. The confession seemed to hit Evelyn harder than anything else that morning, because Lily almost never admitted fear anymore. Not after the funeral. Not after months of pretending she was handling everything better than a 7-year-old ever should. Evelyn crouched slowly in front of her daughter, her expensive coat brushing the marble floor. "Baby," she said carefully, "why did you not tell me?" Lily stared down at her small sneakers. "You were busy." 4 simple words. That was all. But Marcus saw the way Evelyn's entire posture shifted after hearing them. Like somebody had quietly removed the ground beneath her feet. He looked away to give her dignity. That alone made Grace stare at him differently. Most people in that building rushed to expose weakness whenever they found it. Marcus protected it instead. Evelyn swallowed slowly before standing again. "What exactly happened in that elevator?" she asked, without looking directly at him now. Marcus spoke carefully, almost like he was trying not to embarrass Lily. "Nothing dramatic. She was crying. I sat down on the floor so she would not feel alone. That is all." Lily nodded immediately. "He did not talk too much," she added softly. "He just stayed." Marcus gave her a faint smile. "Sometimes that is enough." And somehow, standing there beneath the cold white lights of her billion-dollar building, Evelyn Hartwell realized she could not remember the last time someone had simply stayed beside her without wanting something in return. The rain outside thickened into a steady gray curtain, softening the sharp edges of downtown Chicago beyond the glass walls. Inside the lobby, nobody seemed sure whether they were supposed to leave or stay. Grace cleared her throat quietly, glancing between Evelyn and Marcus like someone trapped inside a conversation too personal to witness. But neither of them noticed her anymore. Evelyn stared at Lily for several long seconds before finally kneeling again, slower this time, less composed. "You had a panic attack?" she asked gently. Lily nodded once, without lifting her eyes. "I could not breathe." The words nearly broke something in Evelyn's face. Marcus looked toward the revolving doors, giving them space again, but Lily's fingers still clung tightly to the sleeve of his jacket. He did not try to pull away. He knew children only held on that hard when they were afraid somebody would disappear. "Why was there no incident report?" Evelyn asked suddenly, her voice tightening as she stood back up. Grace immediately checked her tablet with nervous fingers. "There was a temporary elevator fault logged around 6:15, she answered carefully. "But security marked it as resolved internally." Evelyn's jaw flexed faintly. "Resolved." Marcus spoke before the anger could spread further. "The security team handled it fine. Nobody ignored her." Evelyn turned toward him. "Then why was my daughter alone in a service elevator?" Marcus hesitated. Not because he feared her, because he was choosing his words carefully. "She was looking for you," he said quietly. The sentence landed harder than blame ever could. Lily finally loosened one hand from Marcus's jacket and rubbed her eyes tiredly. "Your meeting room was locked," she mumbled. "I did not want to bother anybody." Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Somewhere upstairs, stock numbers were moving across giant screens. Investors were waiting. Phones were ringing. But down here, none of that mattered anymore. Because her little girl had been wandering through a 40-story building looking for her mother while she argued over quarterly projections. Marcus shifted the cardboard box under one arm. "She was scared when the elevator stopped," he explained softly. "So I sat down beside her. We counted breaths until the lights came back on." Lily nodded immediately. "He taught me the 5-second thing," Evelyn frowned slightly. "The 5-second thing?" Marcus gave a faint shrug. "Something I used with my son after his asthma attacks when he was younger. Slow breathing. 5 seconds in. 5 seconds out." Evelyn looked at him differently after that. Smaller somehow. Less like the maintenance supervisor she barely noticed in hallways, and more like a father who had spent years learning how to hold fragile things together. "You have a son," she said quietly. Marcus smiled for the first time all morning, though it carried exhaustion around the edges. "Noah, 8 years old, loves dinosaurs. Hates homework." Lily finally released a tiny laugh against his jacket. The sound was so soft it almost disappeared beneath the rain, but Evelyn heard it immediately. Her daughter had not laughed like that in weeks. Grace lowered her tablet slowly, visibly emotional now. Even the security guard near the doors looked away politely, pretending not to notice the shift happening in front of him. Evelyn studied Marcus carefully. His work boots were worn near the soles. His jacket zipper was slightly crooked. There were faint shadows beneath his eyes that spoke of long nights and early mornings. Yet somehow, standing there holding a cheap cardboard box, he carried himself with more steadiness than half the executives on the top floor. "Why did you never tell anyone about the elevator?" she asked softly. Marcus looked down at Lily before answering. "Because she did not need to become a story people whispered about." Evelyn's breath caught slightly. That answer stayed with her. Because in her world, everything became a report, a meeting, a discussion point. But Marcus had protected her daughter's fear like it was something private and human instead of something to document. Lily tugged gently on his sleeve again. "You promised to teach me the paper bird," she whispered. Marcus smiled faintly. "I remember." Evelyn looked between them, and for the first time in a very long while, the powerful CEO who controlled thousands of employees realized she had absolutely no idea how her own daughter had learned to trust a quiet man carrying a maintenance badge more than the world she herself had built around her. For a long moment, nobody moved. The rain continued sliding down the glass in slow, crooked lines, while downtown traffic hummed faintly outside. Somewhere above them, an elevator chimed. Business carried on. But inside the lobby, time seemed to hesitate around one small girl clutching the sleeve of a man who no longer worked there. Marcus checked the old silver watch on his wrist and exhaled quietly. "I need to pick my son up in about 40 minutes, he said gently, mostly to Lily. "So, I cannot stay long today, Peanut." Lily's face fell immediately. "But you said we would make the bird." Marcus lowered himself carefully to one knee so they were eye level. "I know." His voice stayed warm and steady. "And I meant it." Evelyn watched the interaction in complete silence. There was no performance in Marcus, no attempt to impress her, no bitterness either. He spoke to Lily with the same patience people usually reserved for someone they loved deeply. It unsettled her more than anger would have. Lily looked down at the cardboard box in his hands. "Did they really fire you?" she asked softly. Several employees nearby shifted uncomfortably. Grace lowered her eyes again. Marcus smiled faintly. "Sometimes grown-up jobs change. Because of me?" The question came out so small it barely sounded like speech at all. Marcus answered immediately. "No, never because of you." He said it with such certainty that Lily relaxed almost instantly. Evelyn noticed that too. The man did not rush his words. He did not over-explain. He simply gave the child something solid enough to stand on emotionally. She realized with growing discomfort that she herself had become so busy fixing schedules and problems and public appearances that she often answered Lily while still looking at her phone. Marcus gave her daughter his full attention like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Can I ask something?" Lily whispered. "Sure." "Why did you sit on the elevator floor with me?" Marcus leaned back slightly, thinking about the answer before giving it. Because scared people feel less alone when somebody sits beside them. Evelyn felt the words settle heavily somewhere deep inside her chest. Not because they were dramatic, because they were simple. True things usually were. Marcus reached into the cardboard box and carefully pulled out a folded receipt with faint pencil marks across the back. I was practicing the paper bird pattern during lunch, he explained with a sheepish smile. Wanted to make sure I remembered the wings correctly. Lily's eyes widened slightly. You kept it? Of course I did. He handed her the paper gently. The little girl held it like something precious. Evelyn stared at the worn receipt in silence. She had spent thousands of dollars on specialists trying to help her daughter smile again. Expensive offices, child therapists with framed diplomas, weekend retreats in quiet lakeside resorts. Yet somehow this tired maintenance supervisor carrying a cheap cardboard box had reached her child using nothing more than patience and folded paper. Grace stepped closer, cautiously. Miss Hartwell, she said quietly, your board meeting starts in 12 minutes. Evelyn did not answer right away. Her eyes remained fixed on Marcus and Lily near the front doors. For the first time in years, the meeting sounded small compared to what stood in front of her. Marcus slowly rose back to his feet with a slight stiffness in his shoulders that suggested too many years of physical work. Lily immediately grabbed his hand again before he could step away. Please do not leave yet, she whispered. Marcus looked toward Evelyn then, finally uncertain. Not afraid, just respectful of boundaries. He knew this was still her child, her building, her decision. Evelyn met his eyes across the polished lobby, really met them this time. They were tired eyes, honest eyes, the kind belonging to somebody who had spent years carrying responsibilities without applause. She noticed faint grease stains near the cuff of his jacket and a tiny rip near one pocket carefully stitched by hand, probably repaired instead of replaced, probably because children came before new clothes. Something softened in her expression before she could stop it. The board can wait 10 minutes, she said quietly. Grace looked shocked. The employees near reception nearly stopped breathing. But Marcus only nodded once, calm as ever. And somehow that calm made Evelyn realize something deeply uncomfortable. The quietest man in the lobby was also the strongest person in it. The lobby slowly began breathing again after Evelyn spoke. Employees returned to their desks in careful silence, though many glanced back over their shoulders as they walked away. Nobody in Hartwell Medical Tower had ever heard Evelyn Hartwell postpone a board meeting for anyone, especially not for a maintenance supervisor carrying a cardboard box. Marcus noticed the looks immediately, but his expression never changed. He had spent most of his life being watched in rooms where people assumed things about him before he even opened his mouth. He learned long ago that dignity was quieter than pride. Lily still held the folded receipt carefully in both hands, like it might tear if she breathed too hard. Can we make the bird now? She asked softly. Marcus smiled faintly. You really do not give up, huh? Lily shook her head with surprising seriousness. Noah says dinosaurs never quit either. Marcus blinked once in surprise before letting out a tired laugh. I told you that yesterday. I listened. Something about hearing her say those words made Evelyn look down for a moment. Children always listened, even when adults were too distracted to notice. Marcus carefully set the cardboard box on one of the leather chairs near the windows before sitting across from Lily at a small waiting table in the corner of the lobby. His large hands moved slowly as he flattened the receipt against the polished surface. Evelyn stayed standing at first, uncertain why she had not walked away yet. The boardroom upstairs waited for her. Investors from Boston were already seated around a 12-foot walnut table, expecting quarterly forecasts and expansion plans. Yet her feet refused to move. Grace approached carefully beside her. Miss Hartwell, she whispered gently, should I reschedule the meeting? Evelyn watched Marcus fold one corner of the paper inward while Lily copied him with intense concentration. Push it 30 minutes, Evelyn replied quietly. Grace nearly dropped her tablet. 30? Evelyn did not look away from the table near the windows. 30. Grace nodded quickly and hurried toward the elevators. Marcus glanced up briefly after overhearing it. You really do not have to do that, he said calmly. Evelyn crossed her arms loosely. Apparently there are things happening in my building I should have been paying attention to. Marcus lowered his eyes back to the paper. He chose not to answer that. The silence stretched softly between them, interrupted only by rain tapping the glass and the occasional rustle of paper folding beneath Lily's tiny hands. Like this? Lily asked proudly, holding up a crooked shape that barely resembled a bird. Marcus studied it carefully, like an art teacher reviewing a masterpiece. That, he said with complete seriousness, looks exactly like my first attempt. Lily smiled wider than Evelyn had seen in months. It was not a polite smile for cameras or school photos. It was real, uneven, bright, the kind that reached her eyes before she remembered sadness existed. Evelyn felt something painful tighten quietly in her chest. She could not remember the last time she had been the reason her daughter smiled like that. Marcus adjusted one fold gently. Paper birds are patient things, he explained softly. You cannot rush them. Lily nodded, as though he had shared some great secret about life itself. Evelyn slowly sat down in the chair across from them, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Marcus immediately straightened slightly, respectful again. Always aware of boundaries. You do not need to stand every time I walk into a room, Evelyn said before she could stop herself. Marcus looked mildly surprised. Old habit, ma'am. Evelyn is fine. The words slipped out quietly. Marcus hesitated for half a second before nodding once. All right, Evelyn. Hearing her own name in his calm voice felt strangely unfamiliar. Most people either feared her title or wanted something from it. Marcus said her name like she was simply another human being sitting at a table on a rainy afternoon. Lily carefully held up the finished paper bird with both hands, one wing bent slightly lower than the other. It is not perfect, she whispered. Marcus leaned back in his chair and smiled gently. Neither are people, he said, but we still learn how to fly. And for reasons Evelyn could not fully explain, those words stayed with her longer than every expensive speech she had heard in boardrooms all year. The rain finally began to ease outside, leaving faint silver streaks across the towering windows of the lobby. Afternoon light filtered softly through the clouds now, turning the marble floors warmer somehow. Marcus glanced at his watch again and slowly stood from the table. I really do have to go, he said gently. Lily immediately lowered the paper bird into her lap. Already? Marcus nodded with an apologetic smile. Noah gets nervous if I am late after school, especially on Fridays. Evelyn noticed the way he said his son's name. Carefully, like fathers did when their entire world fit into one small person waiting somewhere nearby. Lily looked down quietly. I wish I could meet Noah, Marcus chuckled softly while reaching for the cardboard box again. Trust me, if you met him, he would talk about dinosaurs for 3 straight hours. That sounds nice, Lily whispered. The words barely reached above the quiet hum of the lobby, but Evelyn heard them clearly. That sounds nice. Such a simple sentence, yet something about it hurt. Because her daughter did not say things like that about expensive vacations or private tutors or the giant penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. She said it about hearing a little boy talk about dinosaurs with a father who remembered to pick him up on time. Marcus carefully tucked the folded receipt bird into Lily's hands. Keep practicing the wings, he said softly. You are getting better already. Lily nodded seriously, like this had become the most important assignment in the world. Then Marcus turned toward Evelyn. His posture straightened again out of habit. Respectful, professional. Thank you for the extra time, he said calmly. And I am sorry if I overstepped with Lily. Evelyn stared at him for a second longer than necessary. The strange part was that he truly believed he might have done something wrong. Not because he lacked confidence, because decent people often blame themselves first. You sat with a frightened child, Evelyn replied quietly. That is not overstepping. Marcus gave a small nod but did not argue further. He picked up the cardboard box and headed toward the revolving doors. Lily stood so quickly, her chair nearly tipped backward. Wait, Marcus stopped immediately. She walked toward him, clutching the paper bird carefully in both hands. Can you come back sometime? She asked softly. The question lingered in the air between them. Marcus glanced toward Evelyn before answering. Always careful, always aware that boundaries mattered. Evelyn felt something twist quietly inside her chest again. The man respected limits more than most executives she employed. Yet she had been the one to assume the worst about him. Marcus crouched slightly so he could answer Lily properly. Sometimes adults have complicated schedules, Peanut. Lily frowned. That means maybe. A faint smile touched Marcus's face. Yeah, he admitted softly. Maybe. Lily looked disappointed but nodded anyway. Children understood more than adults realized. Marcus reached for the door handle just as his phone buzzed loudly inside his jacket pocket. He shifted the cardboard box awkwardly and pulled out the old cracked phone screen. Evelyn noticed his entire expression soften the instant he answered. "Hey, buddy," he said warmly. Noah's excited voice spilled faintly through the speaker. "Daddy, guess what? I got an A on my science quiz." Marcus smiled immediately. Real joy, unfiltered. "You serious?" "Mrs. Turner put a gold star on it and everything." "Man, that is my boy." Lily listened closely while hugging the paper bird against her sweater. Marcus laughed quietly into the phone. "I told you all those dinosaur facts would pay off eventually." Noah kept talking rapidly on the other end while Marcus listened with complete attention despite standing in the middle of a $1 billion lobby carrying the remains of his job inside a cardboard box. Evelyn watched him carefully during the entire call. He never once checked the time, never glanced impatiently toward the door. For those few moments, nothing mattered except making sure his son felt heard. And suddenly, Evelyn realized something that unsettled her deeply. Marcus Bennett was not impressive because he fixed elevators or calmed panic attacks or folded paper birds. He was impressive because he made people feel important in a world that constantly rushed past them. When the call ended, Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket with a tired smile still lingering at the corners of his mouth. Then he looked at Evelyn one final time. "Take care of her," he said softly, glancing toward Lily. Not accusing, not demanding, just honest. The words stayed in the lobby long after the revolving doors finally closed behind him. The lobby felt strangely empty after Marcus left. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the city outside washed clean beneath the gray Chicago sky. Employees moved through the building again with coffee cups and briefcases, but something quieter lingered in the air near the waiting area by the windows. Lily remained standing there long after the revolving doors stopped spinning. The folded paper bird rested carefully in her hands. Evelyn watched her daughter for several silent seconds before speaking. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "we should go upstairs." Lily nodded but did not move right away. "He looked sad when he left." Evelyn swallowed faintly. "Maybe." Lily looked down at the paper bird. "I think grown-ups get lonely too." The sentence hit harder than Evelyn expected. Children noticed things, adults hid behind polished smiles and expensive clothes. That was the problem with children. They still looked directly at people instead of through them. Upstairs, the executive boardroom buzzed with low conversations and glowing laptop screens by the time Evelyn entered with Lily beside her. 12 executives immediately straightened in their seats. Several investors from Boston exchanged polite smiles until they noticed the little girl holding a crooked paper bird like treasure. "Sorry for the delay," Evelyn said calmly, while taking her seat at the head of the long walnut table. Her voice sounded normal again, controlled, professional. But something beneath it had shifted. Lily quietly sat in the empty chair beside her mother, instead of going with the nanny waiting outside. Normally, Evelyn would have insisted. Today, she did not. Financial charts appeared across the presentation screens, while executives discussed acquisitions, expansion plans, and quarterly projections worth millions of dollars. Words filled the room nonstop. Growth margins, market positioning, investor confidence. But halfway through the meeting, Evelyn noticed Lily slowly folding inward beside her. Quiet again, distant again, the brightness from downstairs already fading from her small face. Evelyn paused mid-sentence while one executive discussed pediatric merger opportunities. She looked down. Lily was tracing tiny folds into the paper bird with her fingertips. "Are you all right?" Evelyn whispered softly. Lily nodded automatically. Too automatically. The same way adults did when they were not fine at all. Evelyn stared at her daughter for a long moment before suddenly closing the presentation tablet in front of her. The sharp click echoed through the boardroom. Every conversation stopped immediately. "We will continue this Monday morning," Evelyn said calmly. Several executives blinked in surprise. "But the investors flew in from Boston," one man protested carefully. Evelyn gathered her papers without rushing. "Then they can enjoy Chicago for the weekend." Silence spread across the room. Nobody argued further. They never did when Evelyn used that tone. But Lily looked up at her mother with open confusion. "We are leaving?" she asked quietly. Evelyn nodded once. "Yeah." "Why?" For a second, Evelyn did not know how to answer honestly. Then she remembered Marcus sitting on the floor beside a frightened child simply because scared people should not feel alone. Such a small thing, yet somehow harder than running an empire. Evelyn brushed a loose curl gently away from Lily's face. Because I think I have been sitting in the wrong rooms lately. Lily frowned slightly but smiled anyway. It was enough. They rode the private elevator down in unusual silence. Not cold silence. Thinking silence. The kind that arrived when people started realizing things about themselves they could no longer ignore. As the elevator descended, Evelyn glanced at the reflection staring back at her in the polished steel walls. Perfect hair, tailored cream blazer, diamond earrings. A woman Forbes magazine once called one of the most powerful healthcare executives in America. Yet somehow a maintenance supervisor with tired eyes and a stitched jacket had walked into her building and quietly exposed everything money could not fix. The elevator doors opened into the parking garage. Their driver stepped forward immediately, but Evelyn surprised him by holding up one hand. "I will drive today." The man looked startled. "Ma'am?" "Take the afternoon off, David." Lily climbed quietly into the passenger seat of the black SUV, while Evelyn slid behind the wheel herself for the first time in months. The leather smelled faintly of lavender cleaner and cold air. As they pulled onto Michigan Avenue, Lily looked out the window before asking softly, "Do you think he got Noah yet?" Evelyn tightened her hands gently around the steering wheel. "I think he would never let his son wait alone." And somehow saying those words out loud made her realize she wanted Lily to feel that certain about her too. Chicago traffic crawled beneath the fading afternoon light while Evelyn drove north along Lakeshore Drive with both hands resting quietly on the steering wheel. The city skyline reflected across the lake in long silver streaks, blurred by leftover rain on the windshield. Beside her, Lily sat curled against the passenger seat, holding the paper bird carefully in her lap like something alive. The inside of the SUV stayed mostly silent, except for the soft hum of tires against wet pavement. But unlike the silence that usually filled their rides home, this one did not feel heavy. It felt unfinished somehow, like a conversation waiting for courage. "Mom?" Lily asked softly after several minutes. "Yeah? Did you really fire him because of me?" Evelyn tightened her grip on the wheel slightly before answering. "I thought he crossed a line." Lily looked down at the folded bird. "But he helped me." The words were not angry. That somehow made them harder to hear. Evelyn slowed at a red light near the river and stared ahead through the windshield. "Sometimes adults make decisions too quickly," she admitted quietly. Lily nodded once like she already understood more about the world than children should have to. "Daddy used to do that sometimes too." The mention of her late husband settled gently inside the vehicle. Not sharp anymore, just sad in the quiet way grief became after enough time passed. Evelyn glanced sideways at her daughter. "Your father also knew when he was wrong." Lily smiled faintly. "Then he bought pancakes." That made Evelyn laugh unexpectedly. A real laugh. Small, surprised, rusty from lack of use. Lily looked shocked for half a second before smiling too. The light turned green. As they drove through downtown traffic, Evelyn found herself thinking about Marcus again. The careful way he listened. The way he lowered himself to Lily's eye level instead of speaking down to her. The stitched tear near his jacket pocket. The tired kindness in his face every time Noah's name came up. She realized she knew almost nothing about the man she fired. Not because the information was unavailable, because she had never bothered to look. Her phone buzzed through the car speakers suddenly. "Grace." Evelyn tapped the steering wheel control. "What is it?" "I hate to bother you," Grace said carefully, "but there is something you should probably know." Evelyn heard papers shifting on the other end. "About Marcus Bennett." Lily immediately looked over at her mother. Evelyn kept her voice calm. "Go ahead." Human Resources forwarded his employee file after the termination finalized. Grace hesitated. "There are notes in here from supervisors over the last 3 years." Evelyn frowned slightly. "And?" Silence lingered for one extra second too long. "Miss Hartwell, he has never missed a single emergency shift." Evelyn's eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. Grace continued softly. "During the winter storm last year, he slept inside the building for 2 nights because he knew some of the backup generators were unstable." Lily listened quietly beside her mother. "There is more," Grace added. "Apparently he also repaired half the pediatric wing playroom furniture on his own time after hours. He never submitted reimbursement forms." Evelyn blinked slowly. "Why not?" One supervisor wrote that he said children should not have broken things if he knew how to fix them. The inside of the SUV became very quiet after that. Outside, city lights slowly flickered on one by one as evening settled across Chicago. Evelyn swallowed faintly. Anything else? Grace exhaled softly through the phone. Yes? Another pause. 3 months ago, he donated paid vacation hours anonymously to a cafeteria worker whose husband was going through cancer treatments. Evelyn felt something heavy settle deep inside her chest. Anonymous? Nobody knew until accounting flagged the paperwork. Lily looked out the window while softly tracing one bent wing of the paper bird. I think he is lonely too, she whispered. Evelyn almost asked why she thought that, but deep down, she already understood. There was a certain sadness carried by people who spent their lives taking care of everyone else first. The call ended shortly after. Evelyn drove in silence for several blocks before suddenly switching on her turn signal. Lily looked up immediately. We are not going home? Evelyn shook her head once while turning onto a quieter neighborhood street, lined with brick apartment buildings and small corner stores glowing beneath neon signs. No, she said softly. I think there is something I need to fix first. The neighborhood grew quieter the farther they drove from downtown. Tall glass towers slowly gave way to brick apartment buildings, with narrow fire escapes and small grocery stores tucked beneath flickering signs. Streetlights reflected across damp sidewalks, while people hurried home carrying takeout bags and umbrellas. Evelyn slowed the SUV beside a modest three-story building, above a laundromat glowing warm yellow against the evening dark. Lily looked out the window immediately. Does he live here? Evelyn nodded faintly after checking the address Grace had texted her. For a moment, neither of them moved. The building was simple. Worn around the edges, nothing like the polished luxury towers Lily had grown up in. But there were small signs of life everywhere. Flower pots near the entrance, a child's bicycle chained to the railing, someone laughing softly through an open second-floor window. Evelyn suddenly felt strangely nervous. She had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without blinking. Yet knocking on one man's apartment door somehow unsettled her more than any boardroom ever had. Can we bring the bird? Lily asked quietly. Evelyn looked down at the paper bird resting carefully in her daughter's lap and smiled softly. Yeah, I think we should. They climbed the narrow staircase together, while the scent of laundry soap and cooking food drifted through the hallway. Lily reached for Evelyn's hand halfway up the stairs. That alone almost stopped Evelyn in place. Her daughter had not reached for her voluntarily in months. Apartment 3B stood at the very end of the hall beneath a small porch light with a faint buzzing sound. Evelyn raised her hand slowly and knocked. Movement echoed softly inside. Then footsteps approached the door. When it opened, Marcus looked genuinely surprised to see them standing there. He had changed out of his work clothes into a dark gray sweater and jeans. His expression shifted immediately from confusion to concern. Is everything okay? He asked quickly, eyes moving to Lily first. Everything is fine, Evelyn answered softly. For a second, Marcus simply stood there holding the door halfway open. Then a small voice shouted from deeper inside the apartment. Dad, who is it? Marcus glanced back over his shoulder. Visitors, buddy. A young boy suddenly appeared around the corner, wearing dinosaur pajama pants and thick glasses, slightly crooked on his face. Noah Bennett stopped short the moment he saw Evelyn and Lily standing there. Whoa, he whispered. You are the paper bird girl. Lily smiled shyly and lifted the folded bird in response. Noah grinned immediately. Cool. Marcus rubbed one hand across the back of his neck, clearly unsure what to do next. Sorry, he said quietly. The place is kind of small. Evelyn looked past him into the apartment. Old hardwood floors, a worn couch with neatly folded blankets, science books stacked beside the television, crayon drawings taped carefully to the refrigerator. Nothing expensive, nothing polished. Yet somehow the apartment felt warmer than the penthouse she returned to every night. Can we come in? Lily asked softly before Evelyn could speak. Marcus hesitated only half a second before stepping aside. Sure. Noah immediately started talking the second they entered. Dad makes grilled cheese on Fridays because he says surviving the week deserves cheese. Marcus closed his eyes briefly with tired embarrassment, while Lily laughed quietly. Evelyn noticed the smallness of the apartment right away. The kitchen barely fit two people standing side by side. A tiny dining table sat near the window covered with homework papers and colored pencils. Yet despite the limited space, everything carried care. Intentionality. Presence. Marcus noticed Evelyn observing the apartment and gave a faint apologetic smile. It is not much. Evelyn looked at the family photos lining the shelf nearby. Marcus and Noah at a baseball game. Marcus helping with a science fair volcano. Noah asleep against his father's shoulder on a crowded bus. It is enough, she replied quietly. Marcus looked at her differently after that. Lily and Noah were already sitting cross-legged on the living room rug comparing paper folding attempts, while Noah explained with complete seriousness why velociraptors were misunderstood by modern movies. Evelyn watched Marcus kneel beside his son to help straighten one crooked paper wing. Gentle hands, patient voice, no rushing. And suddenly she understood something that changed her completely. Marcus Bennett had never been poor in the ways that truly mattered. He had built a home where people felt seen, safe, heard, the kind of wealth no title could manufacture. Marcus glanced toward Evelyn, standing quietly near the kitchen counter. "You did not drive all the way here just to return a paper bird," he said softly. Evelyn held his gaze for a long moment before answering honestly. "No." The apartment grew quieter around them, while Noah and Lily folded paper at the table together beneath the warm kitchen light. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "I came because I think I made a mistake," and for the first time all day, Marcus Bennett looked genuinely caught off guard.